1 minute ago, California's sleeping giant sent a signal no one expected. Lassen Peak is awake. Scientists first shrugged off the satellite alarms, but as the mountain's crown rose and the ground began to breathe in pulses, decades of calm turned to instant fear. If the last eruption painted the sky black in 1915, what unseen forces are moving beneath the pines now? And how close are we to history repeating itself? At NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a bank of monitors flickered with the latest satellite returns. The first scan showed a faint circular rise on Lassen Peak, just a few millimeters, barely a blip. The analyst on duty flagged it as possible interference, but the anomaly didn't vanish. On the next pass, the swelling had grown. By the third, the pattern was unmistakable. The summit was lifting, not by accident, but by centimeters, and the deformation was perfectly centered. Data from ground-based GPS units echoed the satellites. Each station, bolted into ancient granite, had drifted apart by fractions of an inch in less than a week. Thermal sensors added another layer of concern. Infrared readings picked up new heat spots dotting the snowfields, especially near the old Chaos Crags. These weren't the usual geothermal vents. They were hotter, sharper, and expanding. Drone surveys confirmed shimmering ribbons of gas rising from fresh cracks in the ground. Every instrument, from radar to GPS to thermal imagers, told the same story. Something massive was moving under the mountain. In the control room, the analyst's voice cut through the low hum. "This isn't a glitch. We're seeing real-time uplift." Within hours, the U.S. Geological Survey received a full report. The language was clinical, anomalous inflation detected, but the implications were anything but routine. Decades of silence had ended. Lassen's surface was rising, the ground itself straining against the weight of what lay below. For the scientists watching the data stream in, the shock was immediate. The mountain was changing, and the numbers left no room for doubt. In May 1915, Lassen Peak shattered the quiet of Northern California. Ash shot more than 30,000 feet into the sky, blotting out the sun as dawn turned to darkness. The ground shook, forests caught fire, and rivers boiled under a rain of rock and acid. A wall of mud and debris rushed down the slopes, carving a path through everything in its way. Where the blast met snow, the result was an instant flood, water and ash sweeping entire valleys clean. The land that bore the brunt of that eruption remains scarred to this day. Locals call it the devastated area, a barren stretch of boulders and gray dust, where nothing grows and the soil itself feels scorched. Photographs from that spring show families standing in front of houses buried to their windows, trees snapped like matchsticks, and a sky smeared with ash. Diaries from the time speak of animals fleeing, birds falling from the air, and days when the air stung the lungs. A century later, the descendants of those families still live in the shadow of Lassen. Some keep battered relics, melted glass, blackened tools, passed down through generations. One woman, whose great-grandfather survived the eruption, reads his words at public meetings. "It was as if the world had ended, and we were left in the ashes." Scientists now pore over these accounts, matching the old patterns. Rising domes, changing gas, trembling earth, to the signals returning in 2025. The fear isn't just theoretical, it's rooted in memory, in scars left on the land and in the stories still told by those who remember what the mountain can do when it wakes. From a distance, Lassen Peak gives nothing away. Its white slopes and quiet forests look unchanged, but scientists tracking the summit by GPS noticed something no one expected. The ground wasn't just rising, it was moving in a slow, repeating cycle, up, then down, over and over. The measurements showed a steady rhythm, each phase lasting several hours. At first, the pattern seemed like noise in the data, but the repetition was too precise to ignore. The mountain was flexing, not just swelling. Beneath the snow, magma was pressing upward in pulses. forcing the hardened lava dome to stretch and relax, as if the entire peak was breathing. Thermal cameras mounted on drones revealed streaks of heat glowing beneath the surface, tracing the hidden veins where molten rock surged upward. Each pulse added pressure to the dome's brittle shell, testing the limits of ancient rock that had held for decades. Scientists compared the data to the cycles measured at Mount St. Helens before its 2004 eruption. There, the same rhythmic inflation warned of magma on the move. The risk is not just a gentle overflow. If the dome cracks, gases trapped inside could blast outward in a surge hot enough to erase the forests below. This is not a peaceful breath. It's the sign of a mountain under strain, and the next pulse could be the one that breaks the seal. A narrow trail near the devastated area turned strange overnight. Hikers found cracks slicing through the pumice, some wide enough to swallow a boot. The lines weren't random. They curved, split, and rejoined, snaking across meadows and into the trees. By midsummer, dozens more appeared, splitting roads and twisting the roots of old pines. Field teams from the USGS arrived with radar and drones, mapping each fissure as it spread. Interferometric radar scans revealed a ring of ground deformation, expanding outward from the volcano's core. These weren't just surface scars. Imaging showed cracks plunging deep into the crust, connecting ancient fault lines and carving new paths for molten rock. Each fracture vented faint wisps of gas, shimmering with heat on thermal cameras. Seismographs picked up a steady rhythm, small, repeating jolts rippling south from the summit, as if the mountain were tapping out a warning. The land itself was stretching, straining against the pressure below, and the signs were no longer hidden. The shield had fractured. The mountain was searching for escape. Seismic tomography has revealed something unexpected deep beneath Northern California, a low-velocity zone stretching from Lassen Peak toward Mount Shasta and the Hat Creek Fault. This isn't just a local anomaly. Some researchers argue it's a partially molten corridor, a hidden artery that could link the fates of several Cascade volcanoes. Dr. Helen Iwata, a USGS volcanologist, has become a leading voice in the debate. She describes the corridor as a possible trigger for chain reactions. If the magma corridor truly links Lassen to Shasta, a domino effect becomes possible. One eruption could prime the entire arc. Not everyone agrees. Some experts point to gaps in the seismic data, arguing that what looks like a continuous pathway may actually be a patchwork of isolated melt pockets. The controversy isn't just academic. Funding for new sensors and high-density arrays has lagged, leaving blind spots in the monitoring network. As the debate intensifies, one fact remains. The possibility of a connected system raises the stakes for the entire region. Sulfur readings at the summit spiked without warning. Monitoring stations recorded a surge in sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, ratios that geochemists recognize as the signature of new magma rising fast. The numbers were impossible to ignore. At the same time, emergency planners ran fresh Lahar models. Their simulations showed that even a small collapse could unleash a wall of boiling mud, ash, and debris, threatening everything downstream. In closed-door meetings, agency officials debated how much time remained. Some argued for patience, but the chemistry left no room for doubt. On October 18th, the U.S. Geological Survey issued a new hazard map. The red zone expanded overnight, swallowing roads, campgrounds, and entire valleys. Sirens tested in nearby towns echoed the urgency. Local evacuation drills revealed gaps. Not enough shelters, rural roads choked with traffic, communications strained to the limit. The map's new color wasn't just a warning. It was a countdown. For the first time in a century, Lassen's threat was no longer theoretical. The mountain was being treated as an active danger, one that could erupt with little warning.